right, welcome back to the BAT podcast. Howard, Zac, and Alex are here with a very special guest today, Rob Dietz, better known as BAT seller extraordinaire Wob. Rob, what's happening?
Not much. How you doing today?
We're doing well. So first of all, you've sold a ton of great stuff on BAT since the start of auctions back in 2014. We're going to get into a bunch of that in the next hour. But first of all, could you tell us what is Wob? What does that even stand for? People want to know.
I know, and that's why I leave it a secret. It's meaningless. So back in the advent of the internet, when forums were coming out, I had to join a forum, and I had no clue what to make a name for. And at the time, I was dating a girl who her little sister was like 4 years old and couldn't say my name right. And so she would say Wob instead of Rob. And I joined a forum and I just was like, oh, that's cute. I'll make that my forum name. And then every time I join a forum, I would just use some derivation of that name. And when I joined Bring a Trailer, you guys hadn't been doing auctions yet. And so I joined, Wob, W-O-B, whatever, that's fine. And when we first gave you guys a car to sell, my client was like, oh yeah, we have to make an account there. Oh, no problem. I've already got one. Well, we sold the car and it went well, and then lather, rinse, repeat. And here we are like 500 and something odd cars later where I've unintentionally branded this ridiculous name because a little child couldn't say my name right. So
that's how most usernames are assigned here on Bring a Trailer. I have to know, take us back to 2001 when you're arguing about brake fluid on the forums. What was the original forum you were signing up for?
What I think it may have been? I think it was a Skyline forum, and I don't remember which one it was called. At the time, I was looking at an R32 Skyline, and I was trying to learn some information about them, and I don't even remember what it was, Nico, or maybe something to that effect.
Nice, so probably trying to learn how to import one in parts.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get some like cancel culture going if we look back and see if there's anything like super aggressive that was said then.
I don't even know if they've renewed their URL. We'll probably get left page, right?
Yeah.
So Rob, you have currently your auction number 536, I believe, live on the site now, which is super impressive no matter how you slice it. You're, I think, in the top 2 or 3 all-time sellers in car count, in views and likes and watchers. At any metric, you definitely rank very highly. I don't want to give you too much credit, but I think you kind of pioneered this now growing kind of industry of assisting people with selling their cars on Bring a Trailer. I know Dietz Motorcraft and now Wob Cars. You initially started in kind of collection management, but then added to kind of your service offering, assisting sellers with BAT listings. So tell us a bit about kind of the concierge service model and what it is you do every day.
I have to tell you, Howard, the fact that you actually got that completely right is fantastic. I was expecting, not from you, but just in general, it's hard to really get the lineage, and you got it exactly right. So the core of the business started off managing private car collections. And as such, we would just provide whatever concierge service was needed for our clients. That could be finding cars, that could be building out collections, that could be we served as a point person. We didn't really do much in-house aside from, if you had to move some stuff around, it wouldn't start, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, we acted as a middleman to just facilitate the needs of the collection, whatever they may be. And the very first car that we were given, there was a client who had a Defender. And this was, I don't know how many ever years ago, where they weren't going for as much money as they were. 97 Defender, white, reasonably low mile truck. And he said, I'm thinking about selling it. I asked a well-known dealer what they'd give me on it, and they said 34 grand. So if you can get me more than 34 grand, that'd be great. I said, well, okay, we'll give it a try.
Nice. And, entire audience right now is just pounding their keyboards. 97 NAS 90 for 34 grand.
I know. And I think it was like a 30 something thousand mile truck. It was a nice truck. So We sold that truck. We put it on a popular auction site online at the time, and we got like 60 grand for it. And that client went like, holy hell, that's great. And kind of referred us to some other people. Hey, they can do some great stuff on, and at the time it was just me. He can do some great stuff on, selling cars. And I started to get known while I was working for myself for being able to kind of have this different presentation, more photos, professional style photos, more information, which ultimately wound up really gaining steam when you guys started doing auctions. At the time, we were managing Malamut's collection, and he had a couple cars, and we had some conversations, said, hey, we'll give you guys some cars, and I think it was reciprocal, and we gave you guys a single cab Volkswagen. And I want to say it was pretty early on in auctions with you guys. I don't remember what it really was, but maybe it's either auction 60 or 600 sticks in my mind, somewhere in that range.
I have it actually pulled up right now. It's lot number 766.
Hey, close enough. So
December 2015.
Wow, God, it's been that long. Holy hell. So it did well, and at the time, relatively speaking, we look at it and go, well, that's a fair result. But at the time, it did really well, and so we gave you guys some more cars, and then this more public image started occurring of, Rob can help out on a concierge level of marketing cars, and we kind of assumed this role of almost a real estate agent, where we don't own the house, we're not the inspection service, we're not the this, that, or the other. We create a palatable, digestible package of information and lustworthy photographs and information and a friendly face to manage it all, because let's face it, there's a lot of sellers that go out there and they just have the wrong approach to it and get defensive about things, and they grenade their own auctions even with good cars. So it was kind of a package that we put together of being able to promote a car in the right light while being transparent about it, and helping our clients and being able to be informative and level-headed and all the things that you need for a successful auction.
You said right light, and this is something I wanted to get into also, and you touched on presentation, which is something that's head and shoulders above most of our sellers. I am a little curious how you learned to shoot, and when you sort of hone that motif of yours of that like wonderfully soft lighting, you nail a lot of shots. You have, I don't know, probably 8 distinct shoot locations. If you're shooting a truck, you're maybe out in the desert, some stuff, you're probably close to the shop. How did you hone that?
I'd love to say that there was talent or anything behind it, but there's not. There's no talent behind it. And it's something that I encourage other sellers to explore, right? It's get a decent camera, don't shoot things on an iPhone, and experiment with some photos. A long lens goes a long way. You can get some depth of field with a long lens, and too many guys stand too close to their cars when they shoot. And when you stand really close with a short lens, you get this really tapered look where the front of the car looks like it looks like a backwards triangle, and the car tapers away from you. Where a longer lens, or even your regular prime lens, just zoomed in a little bit, squares the car out more. So it was just screwing things up enough until I figured out something that didn't look screwed up.
For our fellow camera dorks out there, can you share your camera lens setup, or is that too much of a trade secret at this point?
I don't even know where it's at. I think I have a Nikon, I don't even know what it is, D750, D7500, one or the other. It's I think it's a full frame. I've got an 18. I was shooting with an 1855 lens and a 7300 lens, and I was changing lenses too much. So I just recently got a 15-140, which has been great because you can get close-up shots and not have to be too far away, but likewise you can step back, give a little depth of field, and zoom in. I'm not a camera guy. This is the scary part. I'm not a photographer, and most of the photography on the site is my own personal. We have guys that we do for other shots and so forth, but most of it's mine. And I looked at my camera the other day and I had 100,000 shutter releases on it in 2 years, something like that. And, that's like 100 photos a day or, whatever, or 200 photos a day every day for 2 years. So it's just repetition too.
I think Malcolm Gladwell in 10,000 Hours would disagree with you that you're not a photographer.
I know, that's the funniest part, right? Yeah, I don't fancy myself a photographer, but apparently I am. So, and then, don't be afraid to get some basic editing software. Lightroom is not that much money, and you don't need to dive into crazy, presets or do anything nuts. I mean, sometimes just shooting on a bright day, you just need to take some shadows out, or, shooting when the light's a little low, just, adding a little exposure to it. Just, you can adjust your car without being untrue to the car, and without, you want to make the bride look the best you can on her wedding day, but you can't make her taller, right? You can change things around. You can make the light look nicer. So we spend a little bit of time in post, and the rest of it, you just try and set it up the best you can, get non-invasive backgrounds, right? Don't have a background where there's like a million things going on and your eyes are distracted to it, and, keep it simple.
Cool. I think we're going to condense that audio clip into our photography guide for everyone out there. We're coaching through photos on a daily basis.
Rob, you have sold such a variety of interesting stuff. I definitely want to get into some of our favorites and the weird and the wonderful. You're based in Los Angeles for people who don't know. I just assume you're driving around the 405 in a Unimog every day and, taking SL65 Black Series in for B schedule services and stuff like that. But certainly you're doing a lot more. You mentioned you sold a 300 SL not long ago. You also sold a 60 Cadillac ambulance project for $8,000. You sold a live steam locomotive not long ago. So how are all these cars finding you? Are you basically saying yes to everything? Tell us about how you kind of approach your own curation when you're looking at business to take on.
Yeah. So a large majority of the cars that are coming to you guys from our account are still vis-a-vis the collections that we're managing. So there is a tremendous amount of those that are just collections that we've been dealing with for years and years. And as our clients want to, part with cars or experience new things or rearrange the collections, they come for sale. A percentage of those cars come from people that approach us as well, that, hey, love for you to market the car. The 300 SL that we just did was a great car. That wasn't a collection we were doing a lot with. In fact, it was a collection that had divested with a few cars, and was looking for a better means and a kind of a better representative to do it. So that was great. That was a fantastic sale. I think it's still the #1 selling car on BAT, as I think we were talking about. And the quirkier stuff, I have a few clients that are really into the quirky, which I love. I think you and I, Howard, have had kind of conversations in the past about this, about, everyone expects us to drive these super cool cars on our own. And you and I both drive just utter garbage cans usually all the time.
We can't have you leave off on that note. What's the garbage can you drive daily, Rob?
Oh my gosh. It's a funnier story than what it is, but I'll keep it short. But I've got some heap of crap Mark IV Golf diesel that I do zero service to. I drove it with 45 minutes with no oil in it one time, with a hole in the oil pan, knowing there was no oil in it. It's great because it's disposable. I have a couple nice things, but for the most part, I keep garbagey cars. They're more fun. I like the quirky. It's like a weird, after you've driven it all, in a sense, you start looking for the new fix, right? So I get really excited by the rare history stuff. I like the World War II stuff. I like quirky. I like exploring everything that the motoring world has to offer. And sometimes that's a train. Sometimes that's a plane, a boat, a half track, a tank, whatever it may be. And thankfully, I have some clients that fall in that same bucket too. You know, one of the clients, we've got a half track that's live right now. And this client's collection goes everywhere from Mercedes 540K to, you know, Chiron to just everything in between. And the stuff that he's the most proud of, that he likes the best, are his militaria, his weird one-off cars that were built. And I appreciate that stuff too. And so when people come to us for it and they've got something interesting and wacky, it's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, as long as it's got a good story, as long as I don't have to have someone chime in and go, oh, this thing was upside down and on fire before. That's not the game. But if it's got a good story and it's interesting, hell yeah.
I want to hear more about what kind of keeps you excited in the sea of all these amazing machines, Rob. But can you? I want to distract here because you're talking tanks, and this is where I get excited. You listed both a Sherman, but also some kind of a light American tank, World War II era as well. The Sherman still had a radial in it, as I recall, a radial engine, and I think the light tank had two. I know it had two hydromatic transmissions, but what have Cadillac flathead V8s maybe?
So we had two Stewarts that we ran. One of them was a dual Cadillac V8, and the other one was a radial as well.
Okay, interesting. So my main question is, do you get to drive these things? And if so, what's that like?
All right, so the tanks, yes. The first time you drive a tank, it's a little nerve-wracking. It's also like a childhood fantasy, right? Then afterwards, every time you have to drive a tank, you're kind of dreading it a little bit. The problem is if you have a nice big open ranch to do this, it's fine. A lot of these tanks that we have are stored close together with other things. And tanks are not friendly to other things. They're not friendly to your fingers for anything. Everything you touch, every door, every piece of metal is just trying to injure you all the time. Every time you move your head, you're hitting your head on stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot. You have to kind of prepare yourself for it. And bigger tanks are work. You know, that Sherman, each of the controls you're working out. So driving them up on trailers for transport and that kind of stuff, it's a little nerve-wracking. The place that tanks really shine are where you have a little bit of space to let them move around. If you have a ranch and a big plot of property, they are outrageous. They're so much fun, and they'll go over anything. And you can relax on the controls a little bit, and you're not having to kind of peek out and need spotters and that kind of stuff. But it's still the coolest thing in the world, and they're super, super loud inside.
I think they really shine in those types of property when you also have disputes with your neighbors. Just go get the tank out, cruise it around a little bit.
Absolutely.
Simmer.
I have to go take out the half track. I got to get a video for the half track. Somebody asked for one, and we were thinking about, there's a Starbucks across the street. We were thinking we're going to go drive it through the Starbucks drive-through.
Hell yes, dude. That's awesome. Have you driven one of those before? Is that more like a truck or more like a tank? Is it actually halfway in between? What does that feel like?
Yeah, it's kind of just like driving an old truck. They make some more noise in the back, and there's a lot of metal bins and such on them that rattle. So they're kind of noisy in a different way. Tanks are noisy in just an engine sound way, and it booms through inside the tank. Half tracks are more like you left like 20 pounds of change just floating around on a metal plate. Everything's just kind of rattly. You can quiet them down by putting rubber buffers on everything. A lot of guys don't do it though. They just leave them the way they were. And, you're not really going far in a half track. You're not commuting with it. It's usually an investment, and military in general has become significant investment pieces for people, between, the way they're registered or not registered, the history of them, just the inherent value. So a lot of people just kind of leave them as is. They don't care too much about it. Like a half track, you're supposed to get something like 1,200 miles out of a set of treads. I don't know anyone who ever needs to replace them unless you're using them for parades and making tight turns on asphalt all day. But it drives like a truck. It drives like a truck that just kind of makes tank sounds in the back.
Now, you also listed a half-track motorcycle. I think it was an NSU. Did you ride that? So you've done all the different size levels of treaded vehicles, all the way down to the smallest one. What was that thing like?
So the Kettenkrad, NSU Kettenkrad. So they are a little bit weirder to drive. And that was when I was really, really excited to drive for the first time. That Kettenkrad, I had never really taken one out on the road. I've moved them around, but never really driven them around. And that was the first one I had to actually drive around, like out on the open road. And they steer very differently, at lower speeds and higher speeds, you kind of turn and you have to kind of manipulate the bike a little bit to get it to turn the way you want when you're on asphalt. But that's a hard one to explain. It doesn't drive like a motorcycle. It doesn't drive like a tank. It kind of drives like a UTV with treads on it. But they're super cool. They're also loud as hell. The motor's right behind you, and they're all loud. Military, everything loud, all of it.
So what's your favorite military vehicle that you've driven or that you've experienced?
What's that favorite one?
Yeah.
It's really hard to argue with a Sherman. There's just something really, really cool about them. We have a Walker Bulldog that we got in this year that's pretty cool. It's significantly larger, which is interesting because that tank is not that much newer than a Sherman. It was really a Korean War tank, and the difference in size is substantial. They're a lot wider. It's an impressive main battle tank. And that, even just getting inside of it, it's a different experience. So it's an interesting step from the Sherman, but there's just something about a Sherman. I know it sounds cliche, but there's a reason why they have the following they do.
Sure.
So I would say, without a doubt, you're the volume leader in offering vehicles with, call it machine gun turrets attached. I'd be curious, these half track and for people that are following along, this is an early 40s U.S. Army military vehicle, which is pretty neat. It's a white, I believe you had sold something similar, an auto car. I guess those were kind of all under the same umbrella, more or less.
Yeah.
But out of curiosity, you're prepping these cars for sale, a tank, a half track, and something breaks. How do you go about getting it fixed? You don't just call your local foreign repair shop.
So this is the best answer ever. We have a tank guy. We have a tank guy, and most of the parts for this stuff you can find. As weird as it sounds, I don't want to say there's more spares than there are, armor, but there's a lot of spares out there for stuff. And there's people who are making parts for some of the stuff too.
They also made a ton of these things, right? And the military kept the parts presumably for a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of backup parts around. And you can find NOS stuff. The Stuart that we just had that sold, we had, was it the Sherman? One or the other. We had optics that were still NOS optics, still in the original bags. And don't get me wrong, they're not $5 for a set of optics, but at the same time, they're NOS, military parts, which are, they're out there. The radials I don't mess around with radials very much myself. I couldn't be that great at diagnosing internal things necessarily, but like any engine, it's the same procedure internally, right? As far as, air, spark, it's fuel, etc.
Also, it's a right whirlwind, right? So presumably airplane guys can fix that engine, I would imagine.
Yeah, they can. It's helpful with tank guys because there is a drivetrain with it too, right? It's not just it's not thrust, it's mechanical movement, but they were built to last in the first place. So there's not a lot of things that go wrong with them as far as moving them around and driving them. It's generally when they sit that problems occur. So if you
also designed for a 18-year-old teenager to fix it with a rudimentary education, right? So
yeah. So yeah, it's not that bad, Howard. There's parts out there and they're not horrific. Now, if you need to replace treads and that kind of stuff, you need extra guys. And I mean, it's work, right? And the guys who restore tanks, I have nothing but, respect for what they do, because it's a lot of work to really fully restore a tank. A lot of work.
I'd love to shift. I know what's near and dear to you, as with us, are European sports cars, which you list in great quality and quantity. You've listed some awesome 911s and 356s, all the way up to a Bugatti Veyron. and some alphas and all sorts of stuff. So I'd love to put you on the spot a little bit as it relates to sports cars you've that have come through your shop. What stands out? What are your personal favorites? And what kind of is most memorable for you?
Yeah. Sports cars, it's a big genre. Do we want to talk modern or do we want to talk European classic, or what do you think?
No, intentionally open-ended, Rob. Go for it.
Okay. The modern stuff is great for all of the reasons that it's great, which is they start up every day. They're easy to drive. You can put your grandmother, like, a Veyron, you could put anyone in a Veyron and they can drive it, no problem. Easiest car in the world to drive. It's like driving a Golf.
I hope you put oil in the Veyron though.
Why maintain your car if you can just throw it away when you're done?
That's the opening line for the next Veyron listing. This is like
we've checked the oil. They do a lot really well. Modern Ferraris. I'm not a Ferrari guy at heart. I'm not one of these guys who eats, sleeps, and breathes Ferrari. However, an 812, or we've got an F12 that's actually ending today. They are fantastic cars. I mean, you can pitch that thing in at ridiculous speeds, plan it, counter steer, and look like a rock star, which again has its place. But I like cars that make you work for it a little bit. I like cars that don't have all of the inputs and nannies. I want to feel like I earned it, even if I screw it up a lot first. I want to feel like I've earned it. So I tend to fall into a little bit more of an analog arena. I have an Ariel Atom that I bought off of Bring a Trailer that I think is one of the funniest ways ever to drive around a track. It's so pure and so fun, and they're not a lot of money. It's a lot of car for the money. So as far as kind of driving stuff around town, I like the sensation and the history and the memories of what European classic sports cars could be. We have a 2000 GT in right now, Japanese, not European, but that we are helping Silver Arrow with. They're a Canadian dealer, and we're going to help them on the US side here with that car a little bit. And that's another one, you get in a 2000 GT, or you get in a 300 SL, or you get in these cars that have these histories to them that people talk about. There's a reason why a lot of the time, right? It's not just, oh, well, it's pretty, or sometimes it is just because it's pretty, but they're enjoyable cars, and you feel a sense of occasion and history with them. A 2000 GT, one of my favorite parts is the clock inside them sounds like there's a grandfather clock inside, how loud it ticks. And when you first get in it and shut the door and you just hear this tick, 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 there's just a sense of occasion to it that you don't get with a modern car necessarily.
Okay, I have to stop you really quick. Tangent on 2000 GTs, top 3 in my personal book. I think Alex is also one of the most beautiful cars of all time, objectively, no dispute. How similar is the raw driving experience to a 240Z?
Night and day. As much as they look alike, I'm not a 240 guy. I like them for what they are, but you can tell the difference in engineering. And Datsun made a great car with it. They filled a void that the 2000 GT couldn't fill. And it's a beautiful car. I think they're great looking cars, but just even the seating position and the hood and how low the car is, you don't realize it until you've really been in one, but they're really low, small cars. They are tiny cars. They're very narrow, they're very short, and they're, they go up to the middle of your waist on height. So there's a different sense of occasion. I'd argue they handle better. They feel just a little bit more nimble. And the motor just has a little bit more character to it. But for the price difference, a 240Z makes a pretty strong argument too, though.
Yeah, you're killing me right now. I wanted you just to lie to me and say they drive identical. Just save at 10% of the cost, get a great 240Z, and move on with your life.
Well, come on down and drive this one, and then ask Howard if he can get a raise going for everybody, and
Nice. That's going to be the topic of the next podcast.
Just corner Howard on it. All right, Howard, we don't have a guest this time. It's just going to be, what's our rating?
Exactly. Topic, annual review.
Famously, those cars are too small for Sean Connery, right? Which is why they had to cut the top off of them. That's the thing I mean, not that I will ever be able to afford one. It is my favorite car indeed. And I was actually looking at that Silverado car last night, Wob, in our system. It's a white left-hand drive car, which is like perfect spec for me.
Yeah.
I think there's only about 50 left-hand drive cars. I'm 5'10". Would I fit in it? That's the main thing I wonder about.
I'm 6 foot. I fit fine, but I like to sit close. So, if you're one of those guys that likes to be foot down on the clutch and be on your toes after you've put the clutch all the way in, it's probably not the right car for you. But I like to sit close. So to me, I'm perfectly comfortable in there. There's not a ton of headroom. It's better than a Pantera. We've got a guy who works for us who's 6'3", 6'4", something like that. He literally can't fit in the Pantera. He's got to sit like this when he moves the car around. He's got to sit with his head to the side. So they're not bad. You'd fit. You'd be fine.
Oh, man, they're so gorgeous. They give to me, they're kind of jewel-like. I mean, they look handmade and in photos. I've only been seen one at a distance at the Peterson when it was on display. I think that's maybe the only one I've ever seen in person. But
well, come on down too. Come on down.
Me too.
Well, on the subject of affordable sports cars, and one thing that prompted my question, Rob, you were actually the buyer of a car that I had my eye on earlier this year, which was a cool 86 MR2 in a two-tone paint scheme that you don't see many first-gen MR2s out in the wild these days in any condition, much less the two-tone. Tell us about what's going on with that car. You driving it around LA, or was that for a client? Or
that was for a client.
Canada. Yeah,
that was for a client. I'd like to say that it was for me because it would be a fun car. But no, it was for a client. Came in. Canada takes, you have to be patient getting cars from Canada. But it came in and was everything it was represented to be, and just went through it, did some additional service to it. He's driving around in it and enjoying it, and yeah, great car. But it wasn't a car that I bought for myself, unfortunately. I'm sorry to cut your story short a little bit there, but
no, it's quite all right. There's obviously a lot of synergy between the collection management and the BAT listing business. I'd love to know, what percentage of the cars you list are kind of, hey, Rob, I want to sell X, Y, and Z. They're at this address. I haven't driven them in 10 years. So if you could go over there and get them running and get them on Bring a Trailer, that'd be great. Or most of the cars pretty on the button and in good order, or is it a hodgepodge of everything that you see?
I try to avoid the cars that have been sitting for a few reasons. However, some of that to me is core to the car collecting world. So it depends on the car. If you can stand behind the car for what it is and what it's not, there's something that's attractive to people and to me about a car that's been sitting in a garage for 10 years, right? There's the idea.
Testarossa in a box, Rob?
Testarossa in a box was awesome. And what the funny part, I don't think I'm going to hurt anyone's feelings with this. When they bought, because it went to South America, when they bought the car, we had a full interior for that car, a brand new full interior. And they came and picked it up and literally just shoved everything inside, didn't wrap it, and went, thanks, and just towed the car out of there. We're like, all right, well, enjoy your Testarossa. We had a Project Testarossa to give some clarity to those who don't know what it was, and we advertised it with a fake box, assembly required, and there was a lot of things with that car that needed to be addressed very publicly. But so I like that idea. I like the idea of a Ferrari in a barn, a Porsche that's been stuffed away with an old man who owned it and hasn't driven it, and I think there's something that's charming and attractive about that. So I like to have those kind of cars in there, and I like to have a variety. I want to offer a 2000 GT or 300 SL just as much as I want to offer a $5,000, Nash Metro. If it's a good car with interesting history or just a special piece in the automotive world, not everyone can afford a 300 SL. Likewise, there's great cars out there of all price points, and there's interesting pieces for everyone out there. So a percentage of, the cars that are in collections, for the most part, I know the status quo of them. That's a larger part of what we're offering is through our collections. But because of Bring a Trailer, there's been a growing amount of people that come to us who, contact us and say, "I love the stuff you do on Bring a Trailer. Can you help us market a car?" And then it comes down to kind of individual, understandings of the car and figuring out the history and so forth on them. But most of them are pretty actively used cars and actively maintained cars. And there's some cars that have been, oh, my grandfather's owned this for 15 years and it's been, or he's owned it for 40 years and for 15 years it's been sitting in a garage. And I like that. I'm glad those offerings are still out there. I'm glad they all haven't been just scooped up and disappear. I drove by a garage in Mar Vista the other day, which is a kind of quieter, becoming more affluent neighborhood though in Los Angeles. And there was a garage door open and there was two 30s Rolls Royces and an E-Type flat floor sitting there with covered in dirt and boxes around them. And, it's one of those things where they're still out there, right? Oh yeah, my dad's owned them forever. We don't know what we're going to do with them kind of thing. And, it's great to know that the Cobra in a barn kind of thing still exists too. So I'm glad to see them on bat. I'm glad to offer a Cadillac, hearse ambulance that needs restoration that you'll never find another one. Yeah, you have to invest some money and time in it. It needs restoration, but it's cool that you can find them, and the Bring a Trailer provides the platform to find them and for buyers to even know they exist sometimes.
I'd love to know, given that you've become kind of a go-to guy in the SoCal region and beyond for listing on BAT. I'm sure time management is something on your mind each and every day, and I have to imagine that taking on the 96 Golf Harlequin or a Saab 95 wagon probably takes about much time to do what you do as a 330 GTC or a BMW Z8 or something of a higher dollar bracket. So how do you square the two? It seems from just a casual glance at your profile that, like I said, you are saying yes more than you're saying no. But given that a $5,000 car can take just as much time as a $500,000 car, how do you? What's your kind of perspective on that dynamic?
It's as much as I'd like to take on a lot of cars because I think there's merit in a lot of cars. We're saying no a lot. And particularly as it comes to cheaper cars and cars that may not have as bigger collectability. Your Nash Metro may be cool. I appreciate it, but it's maybe not the right car for us. So we do have to say no quite often. Within the collections that we're actively managing though, where we are, hands deep in these collections every day, it's a little bit different. We can justify running the $8,000 Cadillac hearse rather than, on an individual basis. Because there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I don't think people really grasp it sometimes, how much work really goes into a successful auction. There's people who knock it out of the park, who phone it in. But then there's also, particularly when it comes to cars that, they may be a little bit more special cars, or there may actually be the opposite. It may be, Porsche 911 where there's, plenty for sale all the time. How do you make yours a little bit different and a little bit more special? It is a lot of work. The really high end stuff, it takes a lot more time, right? When you're doing, point of view drone video and you're doing, full cruise for videos and stuff like that. That's the other thing that I think isn't always grasped is how much time and money, quite honestly, goes into making professional videos for cars on there. And I think it's a point of appreciation where there's some sellers out there that are making videos where there's a lot of time and a lot of effort that go into them. So, obviously we're the YouTube generation in a sense where we all just want to, oh, look at this. They could have done 2 first-person drones and they could have, rented the racetrack for the day and all this other stuff. And it's easy to quarterback it, but there's a lot of effort that goes into it. So there's a lot of cars we do have to say no to, particularly ones that either have, I don't want to really run stuff with a story to it. That's not my thing. I don't really want to run something with an accident to it. I don't, I want clean, good cars that there's no version where I have to sit there and talk my way around the car. I don't want to do that. I want to sleep well at night. I want everyone to know what they're getting. So there's a lot of no's there. And then, when it comes to collectible cars though, I'm not going to, we had a black Z8 we just sold. Black on black. I think it's maybe the most popular that was made, black, or maybe silver black. I'm not going to argue about color. I'm not going to, it was a great car. So yeah, we will take on stuff like that for sure. As long as we can stand behind the car. Cheaper stuff, I don't really want to run a Nissan Versa necessarily, so.
Deep cut on the Nissan Versa there.
Yeah, but I'll leave it blank.
Howard's tearing up right now.
I think his video froze.
No. Do we have time for some? What do you think, guys? Some Dietz market insights. I mean, obviously the car market is super strong. We've talked about that a little bit on previous podcasts. Right, Rob? You had a really nice 70 GMC Jimmy that you sold recently for $40,000.
Yeah.
If I saw that and it sold for 80,000, I wouldn't have even batted an eye, right? I would have been like, okay, vintage 4x4s are super strong. That was a really nice example.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me that some cars like that, it can be 30, it can be 60, it can be 120, and you look at it, it's kind of like, okay, shrug. I guess that's what it's worth. Even stuff like 54 and 55 Corvettes. We've had a few recently that have gone nuts, right?
What the hell is that all about?
Cars
I know.
I've been having a moment with those early Corvettes recently. We had two 55s, really early V8s with the 265 and the 3-speed manual. I mean, that may be my favorite Corvette, actually. They're so pretty and they're so simple, right? And the V in Corvette is bigger for the first V8. I love them. I think they're so cool. They're so interesting. Have you ever driven one of those, Rob? They might be like a kit car. That's what I worry about.
Yeah, we had one on bat. We had a really, really nice 55.
That was way early days, NCRS, right?
Yeah, Howard, I think you're dead on in trying to figure out the market sometimes. And we're in a really strange market right now. Every day, the Los Angeles car powers that be, kind of, so to speak, we all just sit around and go, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. There is a hunger for cars for a lot of reasons, right? And people want to talk about chip shortages and all this stuff on new cars, and that's driving used cars. And it's true. Particularly when it comes to newer used cars. You look at Manheim at what the dealer auctions are doing, and you see crazy numbers on stuff. And there's cars that are over what they should be selling for on wholesale. Likewise, with older cars and classic cars and more collectible things that we see on Bring a Trailer, or I guess you call specialty cars of interest, is that there's a shift in cars being part of a diversified portfolio. And people are approaching car buying with the same idea as real estate and just saying, hey, look, this is part of a diversified portfolio for me. I have real estate, I have stocks, bonds, and I have classic cars. And there's also going to be speculation that comes along with that too. So when you see, the 80s Chrysler Fifth Avenue going for 25 grand, you have to scratch your head on who is making the decision whether they think it's collectible or not, but there's some speculation around it. And it's no different than speculating on a stock in some ways, right? When you say, oh, I think this could go to the moon, well, it's almost riskier, right? Because speculating with a stock could go to zero, right? The company could fold. A Chrysler Fifth Avenue may not be worth 25 grand, but
you can still commute in it.
Yeah, it's not going to go to zero. You got to put oil in it. So I think there's some speculation on it, but it's getting harder to know, right? There's Testarossas are a great example. Huge spread on Testarossas sometimes, where you just scratch your head. We had a 79 Bronco that was a semi-resto mod, had a Coyote motor in, really well done, jade green truck, and it went to the moon. And it just took the right guys who were excited about it. And that's just what happens sometimes. It's hard to get a grasp on it, but trucks, Howard, yeah, for sure. Trucks in general have been hot. I mean, look at LFAs. I told my clients I don't know, 3 years ago, like buy as many LFAs as you can. And they're like, LFAs, no way, you know, and now look at them. I mean, non-Nürburgring base ones are damn near $1 million. Any limited production bespoke chassis car, right, that particularly was not received well. So Carrera GTs, I mean, you couldn't give the things away. LFAs, you couldn't give them away. Ford GTs from the early 2000s, couldn't give them away, right? And now look at where they're at. So when you're looking at what's collectible, SLRs, I mean, we're in that upswing on SLRs right now. And I think we're still going to see that on them. Bespoke cars, low production that may have had an iffy introduction, that's the market that I'm really curious to see where that all goes. But the $100,000 Chrysler Fifth Avenue or whatever it is, you know, that's an interesting one to see where it pans out too, but for different reasons.
I quipped about a SL65 Black Series. I think you sold one like a year ago for like 200 grand, right? We just sold a really nice one yesterday for 325. A good example.
I think it did 406, didn't it?
Yeah, it did over 405 right in there.
No, I'm sorry. I must have stopped watching at 325. It did do over 400. Yeah. Well, there you go.
Yeah. Crazy.
Doubled in a year.
I know. Bonkers numbers. And that's not even a bespoke chassis car necessarily, right? That's a derivation. I mean, obviously a well-modified one, but yeah, the market from 2 years ago to today is just, it's not comparable. That's a great example. That car, a great.
How about those $100,000 3.2 Carrera 911s, Rob? You into those? I'm curious. You've been, selling on BAT for over 6 years or 6 years thereabouts, which is crazy to me. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on kind of how the selling collectible cars game has changed in terms of people going online and selling online, right? Like that's your business largely, right? And so I'm curious what your thoughts are on that and how that's changed or how you've seen that evolve over the last, number of years or better part of a decade.
Yeah. I mean, look, obviously Bring a Trailer really led the charge with it, right? And there's been plenty of people that have tried to replicate it, sometimes almost comically similar. But there's something really special to what you guys have done with the sense of community that's online. It was very organic the way the growth occurred. And it was organic the way the community occurred. So there's almost a sense of kind of familial sense with a lot of the people, especially those who have been on Bring a Trailer for a long time. So that's part of the reason why Bring a Trailer's seen, I think personally, a lot of the success that it has, aside from lots of other amazing hard work that's gone into the platform. And it's hard to find that same replication elsewhere online. But because of that, there's been this shift. There's been this shift to people buying online. I'm happy to show cars. I encourage people to come and look at cars. I want them to know exactly what they're getting. People don't really come look at cars that much anymore. They buy them online and they buy off of photos and discussion and records and whatever else has been posted online. So a shift to buying online has certainly occurred, but it's also shifted from the kind of in-person analysis. And having a platform like that allows that depth of information and that conversation to occur has really shifted the market. And that's not to just, I'm here to talk up BAT. It's just literally that's what happened with the market. And so there's a big shift online. It's hard. I'll tell you what the hardest part is. The hardest part now is as a buyer, because the market, aside from the market being kind of in its own world right now of pricing, it's hard to find platforms to buy off of with any confidence now too, right? And it's hard to find sellers who are engaged, who actually want to show the cars. I mean, go on Craigslist. Everyone's been on there. Try and go buy a car on Craigslist right now. See how far you get before you throw your computer across the room. So the shift to buying online, I think, in a way where you can purchase online at the same way, Obviously, it's been done before with other auction sites, but not in the same way with the conversation and so forth. So it's changed the perspective from a lot of sellers too on what they want to, how they want to go about selling their car. I used to have a lot of people would say, oh, sell at private sale, whatever you want. Now there's no, even if I get a private sale, even at a good number, a lot of my clients go, no, put it on bat. I want to, that's what's great about an auction, right? An auction, somebody's always telling you, let me give you a little more, let me give you a little more. Put it for private sale, everyone's always trying to say, well, would you take, and bat you down. So there's a big push to put cars online, particularly on bat.
That private sale, I hear that a lot. It's kind of a misnomer, right? As if it's so easy. You have like your pocket listing, and I'm going to make a few phone calls and make it happen for you. Like it just doesn't really work that way. Or the people that can actually execute on the quote unquote private sale, they are coveted for a reason, and they have very valuable contacts and all that. But it ain't so easy easy to talk about, not so easy to actually do in real life.
Agreed. I think there is this thought in the I'd say the older car world and maybe the uneducated car world that I and others just have a Rolodex, the size of an off-road tire of people that I can just call at any given time and go, oh, take this 300 SL, that's the one for you, and then the wire comes the next day. It's not like that, especially you're exactly right. There's a few people that have those Rolodexes and that's what they do, but generally speaking, it's also usually seller expectations in the wrong place, hoping for a sucker in a sense. And and I think some of it's also just uneducated too, where the market has shifted in how to sell cars now. And that's just not the way. The guys who were buying those cars in private sale, they're thinning out by the day. And I mean, I'm sure you guys see it too on the Bringer Trailer back end. Your average age of registered bidder, I'm sure, has gained depth and breadth to it, right? I'm sure there's a lot older clientele that weren't really subscribing that I would argue without data that I'm sure has increased on BAT.
I'm sure that's true. I was happened to tune in to a E-Type 63 XK Coupe auction last week. And I just happened, total coincidence, to know the two bidders that were going at it in the last minute. And both were guys in their 70s that I knew kind of followed along. Actually one I knew and one I looked at the username because we can do that as staff. And I was just curious. And it was a guy that I know really well. And I just chuckled to myself that, tuning into this BAT auction on a Monday afternoon. And not only do I know the two guys, but and not that their age is terribly significant, but to your point about demographic, they happen to be, two people that were kind of at one end of the age spectrum. And that makes me happy to see that in in an online platform.
Absolutely. I mean, those are the guys who are wed to the in-person tents and the shift to going, oh, actually, there's great cars coming for sale all week long, right? And I may miss out on something. And the other big thing too I think I should get a check for this, by the way, for promoting this brand here. But
send us an invoice after.
Yeah, is the fee structure, right? And that was, I don't think I'm giving away too much. Our 300 SL Roadster that we did sell, the one that we were just discussing, one of the things that the buyer said was, your fee structure. That's why I went heavy on the car, because I'm paying for a car. I'm not having to pay, fees to set up a tent and serve beverages. So that was a big driver for it. And I think that's another part of what's great about the online experience now too, is that the fee structure can be put into a palatable structure for people to kind of go, oh, well, I can pay up for what I really want instead of just paying for these heavy fees that are going to continue, especially as it gets into the the heavy cars, the 7-figure car range.
Yeah, and that's obviously not unique to collector car auctions, right? Look at online securities trading; those fees are zero, right? Look at what Redfin and Zillow are doing to real estate; those fees have come down, right? How many travel agents and stockbrokers are still in business today, right? So it's kind of a broader trend that we're seeing, not just what we're doing, but certainly.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, well, I'll put together the invoice. Don't worry.
Perfect. Speaking of invoices and lovely settings, are you in? Is that your shop, Rob? Where are you sitting right
Yeah,
now?
this is one of our warehouses. We've got some of the stuff that's on bats here. That's the Ford ambulance, and behind that's the Bronco, Kevin Hart's Bronco that we just sold on bat. We've got our alcohol funny car here, and that SL65 we just sold. We got about 40 cars in this warehouse, and actually I'm looking at another warehouse this week. We need to get some more space. I try to keep the cars at the collections as much as possible, but cars that are, you know, one-offs with people or in process of something for one reason or another, particularly a sale, it's nice to have it, you know, where we have one place, don't have to go to a client's collection or house and have people there if we do need to show the car. So yeah, we're this is just one of the warehouses just filled with a bunch of stuff with wheels and tires.
That's impressive, Rob, and maybe a bigger operation than I expected. How many people do you have in the Wob Cars universe now?
It changes. I try to kind of keep people independent as much as possible. I think, like, even I've got a guy that's been working for me for a little bit now, Matt. He's been fantastic. It's hard to find good people in the car world, as I'm sure you guys know. It's really, really difficult. He has been unbelievably fantastic. You know, he had some business, some kind of consulting business that was spread around for a couple clients too. And I wanted him to not lose that business. So he has some flexibility there and I have flexibility there. So I try to be fluid with it and I try to let people be independent. So I don't want to have on-staff truckers. I don't want to have, you know, on-staff this, that, and the other. I try and keep good schedules where people know when I need them and when they need to be in. And so that way all the cars are getting detailed and prepped the right way and on time. And the next step really is I actually need to hire a few more people because it's getting a little unmanageable for me to be out developing the relationships and talking with the clients, you know, if I'm taking photos and so forth. So there's a few things that need to change, but there's a few guys that help out, and it's only a small circus, not a large one.
Awesome. Any other exciting teasers other than the 2000 GT?
Yeah, what do we have on deck? We've got Michael Richards' Nomad coming up. So Kramer from Seinfeld. We've got his Nomad, which is pretty cool. Black, white. That's a fun car. We have a 4,000 mile Vantage coming up. Nice car. 07 Vantage, gray over burgundy. We've got another Unimog U500 coming up. We have a half track. So here's some, I'm not going to give away too much, but we've been working on something that'll be really, really funny that I can't wait to bring you guys. It's military and it flies, but I won't give away too much because I still need to nail some stuff down on it. But yeah, we always have some just kind of interesting stuff. We have actually, I think we do have another tank we're going to run soon. I think we have another Stewart we're going to run. And maybe a Ford GW or GPW, which was kind of like a Schwimmwagen, a Ford Schwimmwagen. Oh, we've got a Kubelwagen we're going to run, I think, soon too. So we've got some of that coming up. We may have another train coming up, which would be fun, a little steam train. And yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's.
Well, we're really looking forward to the C-130 listing that's upcoming.
So
it's not all that far off. It's not all that far off.
No, that's great, Rob. Well, thank you. I know, I'm sure that our community members who followed your auctions for 5-6 years will really appreciate hearing from you personally. And I learned a lot about Wob and what makes you tick. So we're looking forward to seeing what else you got on the docket for the rest of 2021 and beyond.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you guys just doing the work that you have to do on the back end on this platform, because I can't imagine the scale of work that has to occur every single day on the back end. So especially because, you know, I even take it for granted, right? I send you guys a bunch of photos and I get an output of an ad and everything organized, and, you know, it's really impressive what you guys are doing. So I'm glad to see Howard hasn't gotten fired yet.
Very
But-
good. Thank you. A lot of people said they can't believe it's taken us 30 plus episodes to finally interview you, but we made it happen.
I'm like the number 2 seller. That's the reason why.
Hey, only you have the power to change that.
Oh yeah, that's true. I'll start getting some other cars for you. I'll get more Nash Metros and Versys.
Very good. Well, when you crest auction number 1,000, we'll have you back for round 2. But thanks for the time, and we'll see everyone back here next week.